I'm Dr. Scott Lyons, and you're watching or listening to The Gently Used Human. In the realm of human connection, few topics captivate us quite like love. It's a melting pot of desire, vulnerability, and the profound yearning to be truly seen and understood by another. Yet despite love's universal allure, the path to cultivating deep, fulfilling bonds is often obscured by unspoken expectations, unresolved patterns, and the echoes of past wounds. Mark Groves, a human connection specialist and founder of Create the Love, is with me today to explore the complexities of connection, from the dizzying heights of passion to the depths of rupture and repair. Together, we'll dive into the paradigm of liberated love, a conscious and intentional approach to using our relationships as catalysts for personal growth and expanded freedom. We'll explore how childhood experiences shape our adult relational dynamics, the influence of societal narratives, and the transformative power of taking responsibility for your own evolution. With candor and vulnerability, Mark shares his own triumphs and struggles in navigating intimacy, offering a window into the art of active constructive responding, the significance of clear relational agreements, and the profound impact of unconditional love. A love that holds space for pain, loss, and the inevitable rifts that accompany any deep bond. Let's dive in. Mark, welcome to The Gently Used Human. It's been a long time coming, so thank you so much for joining us.
It's been such a long time coming. I'm so happy to be here. Finally, we did it.
Finally. You know, I never quite noticed. You kind of have a pretty sexy voice. Has anyone ever told you that?
I wonder, someone, I laugh because I spend a lot of time in the States. So as a Canadian, I've started to adopt different American accents.
Yeah.
And one time I got this review on my podcast for 1 star where they said, which you got to laugh at some reviews, but it said, you're not Matthew McConaughey. Nice try, honey. And I was like, what the fuck? First off, I'd rather get his abs than his voice.
For sure.
Right.
For sure.
But I was laughing. I'm like, I'm not trying to sound like Matthew McConaughey. But yeah, I've heard that a few times. But it makes me laugh. If I was like, all right.
Oh my God, it is.
Yeah.
I'm just going to call you Matthew instead of Mark. And then people will think I got
apostle,
Matthew on my podcast.
Yeah. Maybe it'll manifest McConaughey coming in too.
I hope so. Or not. I mean, I actually think you're kind of cooler. So
I appreciate that. Yeah, let's roll with that. I like it.
I haven't listened to your audiobook. Was it your voice or Kylie's?
It was mine and then my wife. I'm most of it. And then there are sections in our book where we talk about different client stories and different experiences for each one of us. And so that's when we switch out. But I do the majority of it.
Mark, there are so many podcasts and books about love. So why is it still so fucking hard?
Man, there's a famous quote from Eric Fromm from the book, The Art of Loving, where he says, which is such a fantastic book. And he says, there's no thing that humans fail at more than love, and yet don't take the time to learn. Essentially, he makes the argument that love is an art, like it's a skill set.
Yeah.
And I really believe that, he gives the example that if you were to become, let's say, a surgeon, you would take the time to learn the physiology of the body and the pathology of the things and whatever. And he's like, but we don't do that. And, when I was in my late 20s, I went through a breakup. And at the time, ironically, I was working in pharma. I was in pharmaceutical sales. And I was really good at it. And I wondered to myself, why am I so good at all these other relationships, but not romantic ones? Why am I so good at communicating, but not in romance? This isn't skill set as a problem. There's actually something more going on here. And I was obsessed with wanting to understand what made successful relationships, because I knew that for myself, it's what I wanted the most was to experience love that was connective, trustworthy. I'd experienced betrayals. I'd betrayed myself. I'd betrayed other people. And I wondered, man, why do some people stay together forever and love each other and other people stay together forever and hate each other? And why, when I left an engagement and I feel more connected to myself than I ever have, do I also feel more judged by the people around me for my relationship ending or quote unquote failing?
Yeah.
And so I think it's hard because there's so many of the things that we do in love are actually to avoid being hurt.
Yeah.
And because we're trying to avoid being hurt, I think it's a strange, maybe it's a joke, a cosmic joke, but it's like where the thing you want most lives,
Mm.
love, is where the thing you're most afraid of also dwells.
Yeah.
And so it's the path really of walking connection and relationship is to actually explore the things you're afraid of, because then you build the skill set
Yeah.
to walk towards the thing you most desperately desire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes me think, I mean, speaking of walking, because it's like an intrinsic process to our biological evolution or our personal development. Like, we crawl, we walk, etc. And it does take a lot of work, but often we suck so much less at walking and running than we do at the same, like we also intrinsically have love as part of our developmental process,
Mm-hmm.
but we suck so much more at love than we do at walking and running.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I think like something that's a physiological experience, right, of building the neural pathways to be able to fire the legs and all the things and become a bipedaler. It's not really dependent on the attunement of another person, right? It's a survival based thing. And I think developmentally humans, when a horse is born or a dog is born, they're equivalent developmentally to a child being 18 months, something like that.
Yeah.
So, it's really interesting that, what really develops us relationally is really those really early moments, especially first many years, but especially the first years, especially with mom.
Yeah.
And, we don't know how to self-regulate. We can't self-regulate till we're about 3. So all of our ability to actually get into regulation and have a nervous system that operates on its own requires an attuned parent. And I would argue that our society, that's not necessarily the failure of the parent, although it can be. It is often because society and communities are not structured to support the parents, especially now. I mean, how many to pay for shit? You got to have generally 2 working parents.
Yeah.
And society wants all moms to be now working, and we shame moms for wanting to stay at home, and then we shame women who work, saying they should. It's like, how do you fucking win? You don't. You win by doing whatever the fuck you actually desire and try to create that space to be able to attune to your kid. But it's never too late. It's never too late. And it's never too, if we didn't get that as kids, which I argue most of us didn't, we can create that with someone else. And that's a beautiful thing.
Is that part of like your sense of like the definition of love, adult love, is kind of filling in the gaps of that attunement or adult relationships? Yeah.
Yeah. So if you think about it, like our argument or case in liberated love is that liberated love is about a fierce dedication to telling the truth. Most family systems operate around not talking about the elephant in the room, not talking about the alcoholic parent. So everyone develops what they call their personality, which are generally adaptive strategies to not talk about the thing. Yeah. And, we become the perfectionist, we become the bad boy, we become whatever. And what's really interesting is that, the things that come up for you relationally, whether it's romantic or not, I just think romantic relationships are the most frequent touch point of the places we need to grow. And they're, I would say, the thing that we're most willing to change for. We'll change for love. We'll change for the possibility of love. We'll change because of heartbreak. Yeah. But we won't generally change. And you know this for sure. Like, we don't generally change anything else unless we hit sort of an emergency.
Yeah.
We don't get control of our health till something comes up, So what happens when we start to orient to our partner from a place of like, hey, the stuff, your defensiveness, my reactivity, my shutting down, this is all material to free ourselves, to actually heal the things that have not been healed. And, most people, their behavior patterns relationally are inherited. When we say that someone, oh, you inherited anxiety from your parent, I mean, that's been long disproven, the chemical imbalance argument, but it was a great argument for pharma. But it's been long disproven, but I would actually argue that it's not anxiety that you inherit, it's the behaviors that create anxiety.
mean, as we're breaking this down, maybe we take a step back and say, what do you mean by love? Like, if this is about liberated love, what the fuck is love? What's love?
What a great thing to be able to get to define. I think love is the shared space with another person where there is safety to be ourselves, that there is a witnessing, a calling forward, and accountability that occurs. But there is the space that we are using between us is actually in service of growing the individual first and then the together. And that, I think, is what's so void of relationship, is that it's usually about compromising yourself, shrinking yourself, eradicating your dreams, giving up things, making your life about other people. And you playing small is not love. You hiding your voice, not love. You taking care of everyone around you and forgetting about yourself, not love. And that's the majority of us. That's what we learn. And I always think, like, if you were to say to someone, hey, why don't we create a relationship where the purpose of the relationship is actually to make both of us better, to heal the things that we have, to bring both of us fully alive and step fully into our potential and honor each other's needs and wants. You want to do that? I mean, who the fuck wouldn't say yes to that?
I don't know what you're talking about, Mark. I'm the sane one. It's them that's the fucked up one.
You're right.
They're the toxic, quote unquote, toxic.
Here's a book that you should read.
Here's the book, babes. Liberated Love.
There's a podcast that I heard these guys on. You should actually listen to this. It's about you.
I mean, that is like, it is the hardest part to like override that ego of like, no, it's about them. And it's like we have all the mechanisms and the structures in place and the the skills to prove to ourselves it's not me, it's them.
100%. Yeah.
And those are so hard to break. To pierce
those are
through
such protective mechanisms, right? Like, I don't have the capacity to hold the shame of my own choices and my own behavior. And it's easier for me to say that I'm the victim of all of these other people's dynamics, which, whenever I say that, the qualifier is you can be the victim of circumstances, but not live there, right? Like, whenever you say to someone, hey, if you actually want to change your life, you have to take responsibility for it. If you take responsibility for your life, you have to recognize the things that you chose to be in. Relational dynamics that were toxic. Yes, you could have experienced abuse. You could have been born into a family where that happened. So actually saying, how do we take responsibility for that, is not negating the experience of it. And that, again, is one of those defense mechanisms and can be a community encouraging bypassing your actual experience. But I'm saying, like, take the grief, take the anger, take the unfairness, take the injustice, and use it to completely change your life. And really, liberated love is about taking responsibility for your shit, like taking responsibility for your side. And we live in a time where there is very much, like, if you look from a research perspective, if you have two GoFundMes and one shares the story of trauma and the other one doesn't, the one with the story of trauma gets more money.
Yeah.
So that just shows you that we like, when someone leads with their wounds, they're really, I would argue, on some way, if it's manipulative, if they lead with their wounds, they're actually engaging in trying to elicit empathy, which allows them to try to get power. But it seems it's a mind fuck because it's inverted.
It's at a cost. Yeah.
It presents as powerlessness.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, they're like playing 5D chess,
Yeah. Yeah.
In another dimension, they're powerful through presenting as powerless in this dimension.
We did a whole episode, I'll send it to you, on the Trauma Olympics. Deconstructing the science of Trauma Olympics. And
the Trauma Olympics are for real.
It's real. It's real. I mean, there's amazing research on it too.
Yeah, and you don't see that in the media.
No, I was sharing on that episode that I actually had a whole section of it on my book, and they took it out, that they felt like it was insensitive. And I can appreciate why. It's very nuanced and delicate, and it wasn't supporting the rest of the book, but it is really important material.
I mean, I get it structurally for a book, potentially, that it doesn't need to be in there.
Yeah.
But if you look at that type of behavior, for sure, well, one, it would be highly correlated to inflammatory states in the body.
Yeah.
Number two, it actually might bypass it. So it might present as like it is vulnerable covert narcissism too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have, I mean, no amazing relationship has been created by trying to protect other people's feelings. I would argue actually that those are the most fucking annoying relationships. One, when we do it, because we're little people pleasing, fawning, and other people who are more avoidant pick up on the people pleasing. And at the end of the day, if you can't tell someone the truth because you're afraid of their reaction, they can't trust you.
No.
They can't trust you because your behavior is actually performative.
Yeah.
And so it's not authentic. And if you want to get like more metaphysical, I think it's David Hawkins who says that authenticity is the highest vibration behavior.
Yeah.
But I actually would say so I always like correlating, like what would the science of that be? And the science would be that your nervous system is regulated and you're not oscillating around other people. Mm. And that actually makes you a great leader and it makes you a great partner, because the best relationships are about telling each other the truth without saying, I don't want to tell you this because it might break us up. Yeah. That means that you actually experience a fracture in the relationship and still be together, but you're broken up on one level.
Yeah. Can I throw a caveat in there?
Caveat at all.
Caveat away. Because I like to think about it as it's important to share your truth, but recognize it's not the truth.
Yes. Yeah, agreed. So truth is subjective almost all the time. There's a few ontological truths that we're trying to get rid of, but truth is subjective all the time. And I agree with you. And really I love that caveat, because when two people experience one situation, an argument or whatever, they experience it differently. And it's actually through being curious of the other person's experience that you understand their lens of the world. And then as a couple, or as friends, whatever, you create a shared world view that includes both.
Yeah.
That's love.
That's love.
Yeah.
That's love. The tolerance for both is inherent in love.
Yeah, that both can coexist. You cannot agree.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Right. Like there's a lot of things people don't agree on. Yeah. There's a famous quote. Well, maybe it's not that famous, but it's from Jonathan Haidt, who wrote the book Coddling of the American Mind, which is a fantastic book. But he has the recent book that came out, Anxious Generation. He talks about how, oh my God, that book, the world needs that book.
Yeah.
Crazy. But yeah, he talks about how, when two different perspectives come together, a third one is created, and it's seemingly wiser than the first two. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, man, society needs that.
I love that. I want to take a moment to give a loud shout out to the Embody Lab, which is one of the most incredible resources for body-based and somatic therapies. This show is all about healing, and the Embody Lab does exactly that. Whether you're on your own journey of transformation and discovery, or enhancing your skill sets in your career as like a coach or a therapist, a body worker, or really any career where you are supporting other gently used humans, the Embody Lab is your place for deep, inspiring, and impactful workshops, certificates, masterclasses, and an incredible community of like-minded folks. I love the Embody Lab, and so do so many other people that call it a platform to come home to over and over again. The Embody Lab is giving my listeners an exclusive offer, a one-time 10% off code to enhance your embodied well-being. All you have to do is go to theembodylab.com and use the code GentlyUse10 at checkout. And going back for a moment, when we talked about sometimes when we share our truth to a friend to try to get more perspective, like to have them mirror back and expand our sense of the truth, which is really important in relationships. And it's like, and we'll talk about it, I know, because it's part of your book, like the importance of a social network in building a liberated love. But there's a challenge that also comes in, which is like when people are fierce protectors and cheerleaders, and that kind of stops them from giving you perspective. Like if I come to you and I say, Mark, my sister is such a butthead, because that's the language I use.
haven't heard
Why is it
butthead in a while.
I
Yeah,
know, I
great.
know.
Great. Throwback.
Throwback to
Baggy
Simpsons.
jeans and
Yeah.
butthead are back.
She's so mean. She's so awful. She didn't call me back when I called her. Blah 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 blah. And you say, "Oh my gosh, she's the worst."
Mm-hmm.
And like, there's that sense of validation that's really like helpful. But there's this like danger, I think, also in friend groups where we just are cheerleaders and validators.
Yeah, I totally agree. We're not telling each other the truth.
Yeah.
We're just reinforcing. I see this a lot in friend groups where they're
Yeah.
frustrated about relationship.
Yeah.
And so then they're all like just hating on whatever. And then if one person finds a nice person, it's almost like they have to leave the friend group, or they're like going against the culture of the friend group. You do see this a lot. It is actually necessary that we surround ourselves with people who actually speak and hold accountability to us and tell it, mirror back. Listen, there are some friends that we go to for that. And then there's the same friends we avoid when we don't want. Those are the people we should go to.
Those are the people. Whenever I have one of those moments where I'm like, ooh, someone did this to me, I text my validator friend, my champion of my life friend who will like protect and burn down a house for me.
That's beautiful.
And I love them for that. And then I go to my one friend who always goes, but how are you contributing to this?
No.
And I go, fuck you. But I'm like, thank you.
Yeah. If we could find the friend who is the absolute cheerleader, because of course that's our partners, right? Can they speak the potential and possibility into us, ideally? Yeah. And we do the same. It's like, if we can do that, can we also have a rudder of truth that exists in the speaking of potential? I think about, there's this response style called active constructive responding.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, it's really interesting because the way that you respond to someone's good news is actually predictive of your relational outcomes. Oh. So when someone's like, oh my God, I just ran a marathon and it was amazing and it was the first one I ever did. There's active constructive, which would be like, oh my God, I know you've been working so hard. Like, tell me about it. What was the best part? What was the hardest part? I'm so proud of you. And so you're actually helping celebrate the thing. Passive constructive might be like, that's really great. I'm really proud of you. Let's get on with this run or whatever we're doing.
That's not sexy. I just want to be really clear, y'all.
Not hot.
It gets
hot.
Worse. Oh no.
It gets worse. Yeah.
Oh no.
So then there's passive destructive, which would be something like, oh yeah, I just ran 2 marathons. I've already done a few of them. And what was your time? Oh, my time was a little faster. So it's not like saying you suck, but it's saying you suck. It's passive. And then there's active destructive, which is, oh, have you thought about how much this might cause injury for you? Have you thought about how people who run marathons tend to actually get inflammation in their hearts? Yeah. So it's actively destroying the good news. Wow. And I notice people do this when they're like, they think, or they were raised in an environment where they think criticism is connection.
It's a currency of love.
What is so cool, I remember when I started looking at the research at relationships, was that I remember thinking like, oh my God, are relationships that are successful actually as simple as math? Because there was this study that the Gottmans did. They took newlyweds and they put them in this apartment overlooking Lake Washington. They called it the Love Lab, and they recorded their conversations. And then they followed up with them 6 years later.
Just so everyone knows, with their consent.
With their consent. You just got married. We'd love to record everything you're about to say. And they could predict that a couple would be divorced in 6 years by the amount of positive interactions they had to every negative interaction. So if it was below 5-1, it predicted divorce. If it was above 5-1, the couple was more successful. If it was 7-8-1, it was even better. And so you think about it, it's like if you have a fight, so let's call that like a withdrawal from the relational bank account. It's like, put more deposits intentionally. So if you really want to improve your relationships, this happened with me. I remember thinking like, oh, my interaction with one of my family members is often me like maybe criticizing the news they're sharing. Like, I noticed when I learned active constructive responding, I was like, fuck, I've done active destructive. I've done these things. So then I intentionally only had positive interactions with this family member. And one day they called me, which had never happened, and said, hey, I was wondering if I could get your advice on something to do with my relationship.
Whoa.
And I was like, are you acknowledging that I know stuff about relationships? This is interesting. But it completely changed our relationship.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing. And all of that from just transforming the way that you speak. That's
the number
powerful.
of positive engagements.
The number of positives,
Yeah.
Can you give some examples of positive engagements?
Yeah. So in the research, they call them bids, like bids for attention. And the amount of bids that we turn towards. So let's say you and I are in a relationship, and let's say in the morning you're reading something and you're like, huh, that's a bid. And all of a sudden I could either be like, fuck, you're so annoying with your hums. Or I could be like, what are you reading? So now I'm turning towards your bid.
Yeah.
So successful couples turn towards, I believe it's 87% of bids was like really indicative. And the ones that didn't do well turned towards around, I think it was 38%, something like that. So it just shows you that these micro moments, we think it's like, you missed the anniversary and now we're done. Or you missed Valentine's Day. It's like, no, it's actually all of these little moments. So another bid could be like, oh, how was your day? Right? But bids can be a kiss, like trying to kiss your partner, putting your hand on their lower back. Like that's again a bid. Yeah. So these little things that if we're really mindful of, when we're resentful, we don't want to do them. When we're upset, we don't want to do them. So everything that doesn't get communicated gets communicated.
Yeah. I'm a big proponent of at least 3 levels of bids, bid on bid on bid, which is like
you're stacking your bids.
I'm stacking the bids. You got to stack the bids. Like if you say, how's your day? The conversation is not done when they share it. It's like you have to do at least several more bids in that. And that's, I mean, if you want that foreplay of conversation, that's where it's is bid on bid on bid, at least.
Yeah. Right. And when you look at the research on sex, and this is different for men and women, like it will be more for men, they have more spontaneous desire. So like, oh, I have an erection, I want sex.
Yeah.
Or I'm feeling aroused, I want intimacy.
Yeah.
And then there's another type called responsive desire. And that is like, well, I wasn't really into it, but we started kissing and now like, hey, my motor's running, I'm ready to go. So women tend to have more of a responsive form of desire, but it's obviously very subjective for each person. And that is like, did they take the garbage out? Did they do the thing? So the person who's like more, the love languages are actually building the openness to intimacy. And it's important for people to know that because we actually project what we think the world is like onto other people, what we think sex is like onto other people.
Yeah.
And then we feel rejected.
Yeah. I mean, that really starts to speak towards the idea of how much work it takes to unpack what each person means by sex and love and relationship to form the relationship.
Yeah, to create really clear, one of the things we propose in the book too is to just get really clear on what you want to create with your relationship. Like, in the research, the reason that relationships end is because they don't create clear agreements in the beginning. So why don't we get really clear? Like, what is the purpose of our relationship? What are we trying to bring forth? Because for some people, it really is just like an economic exchange. And that's what they want. So, hey, sugardaddy.com exists for a reason.
That's how I found my partner. Yeah.
Sugarbaby.com. Maybe there's probably both. I'm sure both exist.
Both. I think both do exist.
Which is crazy to me to think of like being on sugarbaby.com.
I mean, I did put a profile up of you on there, just FYI, before the show. We'll have all the profiles that responded after the show in our follow-up session.
It was like, I thought he was married. I remember someone took my images and put me on, I think my name was Justin on it, but they put me on this profile and it was christianmingle.com. And I was like, well, you definitely didn't get me right. Like, no, I mean, I love a good Christian, don't get me wrong. But I'm like, I've broken all their rules. I'm not, If I join that religion, I'm going to hell. It's,
Stay with religions that don't have a hell. You'll be fine.
yeah, that feels better where the behaviors in my life are not connected to a dark underworld and that I don't even know if I go to till I'm already done. So
The
you spend your
mystery.
whole life trying to get to the upstairs and you don't find out.
I love the suspense.
Yeah. Yeah, right. I remember hearing a quote from Alan Watts where he said that the greatest trick the church ever pulled was to become the broker between you and God.
Mm,
And I was like, ooh, that's good.
that's sharp. Wow.
Right? Like, oh, if you donate enough, you go. If you behave in the moral compass we create for you, you go. If you don't, sorry.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, I only studied some aspects of the history of religion. I don't have a PhD in it, or do I? No, I'm just kidding. I dropped out of that one. But it's really interesting about, like, as religions shifted from just the spiritual intent to include. So I'm not saying it left it behind, the spiritual intent, but included ways of organizing chaos in society.
Mm.
And that's like, in the dark ages and ultimate chaos and disease and famine and stuff like that, there was this way that was the perceived way of helping organize and manage all the feelings and the dissonance between people and the civilization.
Yeah, it's so interesting. It's interesting to our need for something greater than ourselves, And I know in the research on psychedelics, like when people who have committed a crime do one psychedelic journey, they're less likely to reoffend.
Oh,
and that makes sense. It's like, I mean, I've done psilocybin and I've experienced that feeling of being connected to something greater. And when you think about that relationally, because it's so relevant, is like when you actually think that one, everybody till they're not are playing out their wounds, right?
Yeah.
Relationally.
Yeah.
So if we can recognize that they're playing out their wounds, and also that not only does my partner wound me in a way that's familiar that I'm trying to resolve, I'm trying to heal unconsciously.
Yeah.
I'm doing it to them. So, how you were saying, like, well, my partner, when we joke, they need to read the book. It's them. When we can actually recognize, actually, probably even in that behavior, we're wounding them in a way that's familiar. So when we can realize that the sacredness of this relationship is actually bringing forth the material that we need to heal, oh my God, what a different way to orient to the challenges, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, can you share some from your own history about, like, what are the major, first of all, like, how did you define relationship in your relationship? How did you define what the meaning of intimacy or sex was? Because you talk about, like, that process, but I think it's helpful for people to hear, like, how you did it and what conclusions you came to, or what clarity you came to.
Well, I often joke that my relationships from my 20s and my teens, if my ex-girlfriends are listening, know that they were in service of my evolution.
We actually have them on the show today, Mark. They called in.
They've just called in, and
Patricia's here. Leslie's here.
We actually dedicate our book to our previous partners and those who've supported and loved us along the way.
I love that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's because I look back and I'm like, man, I wish I had this skill set younger, but you only develop this skill set through living.
Yeah.
So the book is structured Relationship 1.0, The Sacred Pause, and Relationship 2.0. And for you guys listening or watching, that's like Relationship 1.0 is Kai and I were together for 4 years. Then we broke up. We were not getting back together. And then we came back together, and that's Relationship 2.0. The book is not a biography. It just tells parts of our story. And Relationship 1.0 being the way you've done relationship today. Let's find out where it comes from. And so we really go through what we call the relationship blueprint.
Yeah.
Looking at the origin of the things you've gone through. And then the pause is, okay, let's regroup. Like, let's create some agreements around what regrouping means. If we're in a relationship, let's actually have a conversation about regrouping and redesigning our relationship. If we're single, let's get our poop in a group and get things together.
Sorry, what?
Get our
Poop
poop in a group. Get our poop in a group.
Is that a Canadian phrase? Get your poop
Instead
in a
of
group?
get our shit together. Get our poop in a group, right? Not bad. It doesn't bring the censors forward. And it's kind of funny.
I'm sorry. Okay. I'm here with you now.
You'll be using that. Come on.
I've already used it in my head twice. So, yep.
Well, relationship 2.0 is then creating something that is possible from actually taking charge of what you want to do with your relationship and how it wants to be. So for us, and in my relationships previously, I mean, gosh, I would have, in my teens, my relationships, both of them led to betrayals. So I was cheated on. And I had a big change in how I related after that second one, where I then created unconsciously the story that when I love people, they betray me. And when I love people or I let them love me, I lose myself. So I went from being very monogamous, very desiring love, the Disney fairy tale, blah, blah. But I was boundaryless. I didn't have good boundaries when I was a teenager and in my early 20s. And that was why I ended up being betrayed, because if I can look back, and I think this is true 100% of the time, but I'll say 99.9 just for the person listening who's like, not me, probably you still, but that's okay, is that external betrayals are almost always preceded by internal betrayals. So what shows up as a betrayal outside of you, you've usually betrayed yourself and your values or something much earlier, probably in service of the relationship. And so when I was in my 20s, I then went to much more like casual relationships, one night stands. And I was really trying to control the depth of intimacy. I did date a really incredible woman for 5 years. That's the one that I went through the breakup in my late 20s. We got engaged, but I couldn't receive her love. I didn't know how. I was so, it showed up as like, she's not my person, which is inevitably true, but I wouldn't have known how to move to another level. I would have had to let her love me. So I started the journey at 27 of studying relationships. And when I was 34, I was on a call with this woman named Kelly Marceau, who's a great writer, relationship person. And she said to me, Mark, I know you like know a lot about relationships and like, it's great, which I'm like, this is a pre-delivery for a bomb. And she's like, have you ever actually let a woman love you?
Oh, damn.
Yeah. And I was like, yeah, like, yeah. But something completely shifted in me when she said that. And it was like my whole world organized and all the pieces went into place. I got off the call with her and I remember thinking to myself, like, holy shit, I have not let a woman love me since I was 20.
Wow.
And this is like 14 years.
Yeah.
This is actually studying relationships. This is like going into the research on them and blah, blah. But I had yet to see that I was terrified of being loved. So when Kylie and I started dating, my wife now, and co-author of the book, I was done dating people who couldn't choose me. And yet I found myself in a relationship with someone who wasn't sure they could fully choose the relationship. So we spent the majority of relationship 1.0 trying to figure out why she couldn't choose it. But then that required her to believe that there was something wrong with her that she couldn't choose it. And I kept staying in this wound that no one could fully choose me. And so it was the dissolution of that relationship that led me fully choose myself and her. We finally said like, hey, maybe there's nothing wrong with you that you can't choose this relationship. Maybe that's actually you're picking up on something that I don't see. And it's actually wise. Like there's nothing wrong with you. The thing coming up is actually brilliance and wisdom. And that completely changed the structure of the relationship. And when we broke up, we did a closing ceremony. And the closing ceremony, I remember we hadn't seen each other since like the final conversation actually had to happen over FaceTime because I was traveling for work. And so we hadn't seen each other and we really wanted to just see each other and close out that, have a conversation. So I Googled closing ceremonies, relationships, and I was like, do other people fucking do this? This is crazy. And they do. So I took a culmination of different ones I read and sent her the questions or the prompts that we would review. She was like, all right. And so I remember pulling up in the car right before the closing ceremony. And I was like, I don't want to do this. And I was like, do I not want to do this because I just genuinely don't want to, not ready for it? Or do I not want to do it because the person who can do this doesn't exist yet? Like he only exists through this moment. And it was number 2. So I got out of the car, went inside, and I had, without a doubt, one of the most transformative conversations of my life. What that did, the reason I say that is, and why, to answer your question in a very long way, is that it was the lived experience that love not only didn't go anywhere, it deepened. The respect for each other deepened. The trust for one another deepened. That you can actually love somebody and honor that your path is not aligned, and that love doesn't go anywhere. So it was like the actual lived experience of unconditional love, that we held space for both our pain, for our losses, for the ruptures that happened in our relationship. That really set the stage for the coming back together. We didn't know that, but it really did, because when we came back together, the agreements we made about our relationship, first off, were that we were just going to actually date for 3 months and not have any penetrative sex. But one of the premises that we came with, let me just pull it up here.
Yeah.
So this quote really defines liberated love so well. It's from Ram Dass. The highest relationship is where two people have consciously and intentionally said, yes, let's get free. And let's use our relationship with one another as one of the vehicles for doing that. In order to do that, since we know that in freedom is truth, let's be truthful with one another. So liberated love and the agreements of our relationship are that it's being able to access real choice in our relationships. Like to stay, to go, to choose, to not, and to be able to honor that. That allows a being, which we were talking about, like when a child doesn't have an attuned parent, they don't have the experience of a self. So if I cry and no one comes to me, then I'm not actually validated that I have an emotion, if that makes sense, that I have a self that has an emotion. And really that is what happens in the very early childhood is like a self is being installed, a sense of self. So the relationship could be the container for that. And there's also, from the result of experiencing trauma, we disconnect from choice. There's a saying that the opposite of trauma is choice. So like encouraging choice in relationship, you're actually healing, reconnecting to the energy of love and sharing it in ways that serve and honor life. Healthy boundaries, having these types of hard conversations. Take responsibility for your life and how you show up in relationship, that there's a deep devotion to truth, that we're honoring someone else's path as our own. I honor my wife's path as being separate from mine. And if it happens to steer to a different direction, I would be devastated, but I would love her. Practicing unconditional positive regard for both self and others. And that one feels just so, I think we can lose that one pretty easily if we've ever had it,
Yeah.
Does that answer your question? I answered like 9 questions with one answer.
I love that. This show is also brought to you by the absolutely stunning and powerful tools of transformation that are created by Omala. Oof, even the name Omala transports you to a place of flow and vitality. These are some of my favorite products ever. They have an amazing color-changing yoga mat that responds to your temperature and presence and reflects back your posture in real time. There's this incredible smelling skin balm candle that heats up to activate all the essential oils and vitamins that your skin has been craving. I mean, look, if I could live in a giant bath of this candle, I would 100% do it. They also have these journals that lead you into profound insight, and then you get to plant those journals to create a stunning flower garden. What? I mean, if that's not deep and inventive, I don't know what is. If you're someone who desires to live a luxurious flow of life and who believes in transformative wellness, then you have to check out Omala. Omala is giving my listeners an exclusive discount to treat yourself to something that is as special as you, boo. All you have to do is go to omala.com, that's OMALA.com, and use the code DrScott10 at checkout. And a portion of every purchase goes to an incredible charity. You got this. I love that, part of our development, as you say, is like the installing or the reaffirmment of self. And that we need that early support system and mirror and they're both supporting and mirroring us to reaffirm and create enough safety for us to feel ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
It's so imperative, and the consequences create all these survival strategies, as you're talking about, that just get in the way of this liberated love. So you answered my question and more.
Well, there's such a deep understanding that everything that you do relationally, you needed to do to survive, and to get to this moment. So it was all in service of you, even if it wasn't, even if it was painful, even if it was destructive, even if it caused the development of addictions, even if it caused people pleasing or cheating or lying. There's always an opportunity to at least meet that with grace, to say, holy shit, this is the best I knew. But there's actually more available. And a lot of us say no to the asking of that, the request that your partner makes, life makes, circumstances make. And I would argue that you could say no. It seems optional.
Yeah.
But it's not, because the dissonance of knowing you can be better than you are is what fuels materialism, addictions, because it's really just the pain of your potential being untapped.
Yeah.
That's why love is a great vehicle for that. But you could have a rock bottom with anything and it be a vehicle for that. But I would argue that eventually you get so much more connected to your somatic experience, your body, your intuition, that any deviation from being in alignment with your own values will actually cause you to develop addictions if you don't listen.
Yeah, that's self-abandonment.
Yeah.
Is one of the major survival strategies, or as a result of all these survival strategies, is that really how you see the formation of codependency, which you write a lot about in the book?
Yeah, so we define codependency in the book as any relational dynamic where we source safety from something or someone at the expense of our own needs, our own wants, our own sense of self, our overall well-being. So you definitely develop it in early childhood, often even as a teenager. Yeah. And really it is about this orientation of other over self, as you're saying. And listen, relationships require compromise. There's no doubt about that. But there's a delineation between compromise and self-abandonment that I make, which is that self-abandonment, you are losing something, and it usually will source, you'll start to have resentment. Yeah. So wherever resentment lives, you're prioritizing something or someone over you. 100% of the time. That one doesn't even get a caveat. It's 100% of the time. It's beautiful evidence that you need a boundary and to claim something for yourself. Make a request, whatever it might be. Compromise in a relationship is in service of the relationship. So we know that. We can sense that in our body. I know I need to do this, or I need to give up this thing. But the real catch is that the relationship processes your loss and acknowledges your loss. Yeah. And might say, I know you're giving this thing up right now. Yeah. How about we meet that need down the road? Okay. And really, we know that we need each other. The opposite to codependency isn't overt independency. It's not oh, I needed someone and then I got hurt. They let me down, so I'll never have needs. Yeah. It's well, that's still codependency. It's how do we act? Because what you'll end up doing when you're in that pattern is being in relationship with people who are trying to solve your problems and meet your needs. Yeah. So we say codependency is a relationship dynamic, not just one person, but two people. So the healing of that is how do we be two people where we're saying, I'm not going to lose myself for the relationship, and I don't want to hold on to myself at the cost of the relationship. So it's this symbiotic flow that's occurring, that the system is getting feedback all the time.
that bidirectional
Yeah.
continuity. Yeah. How prevalent do you feel like codependency is? I mean, as I know you've spoken and worked with so many people on relationships, is this like a major presence among a lot of people?
Yeah. And, codependency as a term is originally from addiction
Yeah.
circles, right? And really based on the phenomenal seminal work from Melody Beattie in her book Codependent No More, which is really about Al-Anon and the dynamics of that. It's a fantastic book. We really started to see that it exists so much beyond relationships to addicts that it's like, it is, because first off, someone who has a problem or an addiction, it doesn't have to be heroin. It could be a phone. It could be, you could be addicted to feeling like you're broken, which is often what fuels addictions. But it's like, you could actually just identify as being the fuck up, being the person who's always got the problem, who's never enough, who's the problem with the communication. You're never vulnerable enough. You're the one who can't show up. This is a perfect pairing for someone who wants to help you and support you and fix you. And so prevalence so high. And the more I would argue that most relationships are codependent, and at least very subtly codependent. We talk about what we call codependent hooks in the book. And codependent hooks, I actually see a lot working with people who work with people. And the reason I see that is because what makes people go into work where they're taking care of other people is usually because they developed a survival strategy to be highly attuned to others. So doctors, nurses, therapists, coaches, name the whatever you're monetizing, taking care of people. And what I see from this is that the survival strategy of caretaking becomes a superpower when it's no longer coupled with your need to feel worthy and like you're enough. And most of us don't do that work till we recognize that that's true. So that's why when I'm working with someone who's trying to grow their business, or like an entrepreneur who works with people, that's usually where we end up going, because their work is not actually freeing people because they still need on a subtle level to be needed.
That's deep.
And then it completely transforms their work, because energetically the relationships with their clients, they're not hooked in with them.
Yeah.
And so, yes, in relationship, we do this where I'm like afraid that if I tell you something, you might leave. So I silence myself. I'm actually creating a hook.
Yeah.
So we have all these little tentacles that are into people. Oh, I'm paying for everything.
Yeah.
I'm just doing it because I'm altruistic. I'm a good guy. No, altruism, we know, is not free. Anyways, you get a flood of great neural cocktails that come with that. But it's that, like, if I'm paying for things, then you can't leave me. You need me.
Yeah.
If I'm paying for things, I maintain control over your voice. I maintain control over your expression. And we know that. We could see that from like the history of patriarchal relational structures. But yeah, I think as biological beings, when you look at the fact that we really oriented to relationship to survive in the history of marriage, we really got married to get more in-laws. But I don't think anyone wants to try to get more in-laws, really. Now we want different things from love.
Yeah.
And so we have to develop different skills.
Yeah. Brilliant. Mark, we brought you on The Gently Used Human to play a game called Codependent or Not, or as we now call it, Hook or Not.
I like it. Hook or not. Hook or not. Okay, perfect.
Are you ready? So you tell us, I'll give some examples, and you tell us, is this hook or
Hooker.
not? Is this codependent or not? Are you ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
Also, thank you for your wisdom. This is a playful transition from wisdom to more wisdom with play.
Let's do it. I love it.
All right. I left the house, got in the car, called my partner, and told them I missed them.
Beautiful.
You like that?
Yeah. I mean, as long as we're not doing that type of thing to try to elicit a response.
Perfect.
So the intention is important.
The intention is important. I'm a terrible dresser and rely on my partner to dress me.
Oh, man. Okay. If the partner says you need to change how you dress, and here's what you need to wear.
Yeah.
Codependent. If I say to you,
yeah,
you got great style.
Thanks.
I would love your support in actually helping, choose the clothes I wear. That, not codependent.
I will help you, Mark.
Sweet. Next time I'll come home with your glasses and this sweet ribbed sweater.
I'm wanting that hat. So, fair trade.
This hat is great. This is a great hat.
Great. I'm into it. All right.
This is so good.
I pretend to need help with jars just so my partner can feel successful.
Codependent.
Woo!
Now, I have to add caveats to all this. This is the caveat podcast.
This is the caveat podcast.
One thing that I think is actually really interesting is like my wife, when she wants to, let's say, open a jar of peanut butter or something.
Yeah.
She's like, hey, can you open this? Now, listen, I know she can open a jar of peanut butter. But if I am the reason she has access to peanut butter, that gives me great purpose. So I think when we're actually doing it from a place of like, we are celebrating our partner through a subtle way.
Yeah.
That's great. But where the slippery slope, and this happens in couples where one person in the relationship will be sick and the other person takes care of them. And as soon as they get better, the other one gets sick. So this is like when we're using needing to be needed as a dynamic to keep people close.
Yeah.
That's the intention again.
Yeah. Intention matters, my friends.
Mm-hmm.
Should we do a few more?
Yeah, let's do a few more.
Because we can all relate to all of these.
Yeah, try.
I set alarms on my phone to remind me to text my partner, I love you, every 3 hours.
It's a little weird.
Should it be every 2 hours, Mark?
Yeah, that frequency is a little long. That's the problem here. I would say every 12 minutes would be much more loving. I mean, I would want to dive into like, why do you feel you need a reminder? What's driving the intention of the reminder? Oh, well, my partner needs me to do that. Codependent.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that we can't have words of affirmation as a form of our love language.
Yeah.
Which usually our partner's number one way that they receive love is usually the one that we have the greatest challenge giving.
Totally.
Yeah, it's a strange mind fuck, because really what your relationship's saying is, we need you to lean into the thing you're not comfortable leaning into so that your partner can feel loved and appreciated.
Yeah. Because
most of us give love the way we actually receive it. So we think everyone wants gifts, but maybe they want physical touch or quality time.
I want bids on bids on bids.
Stacking.
I want
stacking bids all day. I feel like we could turn a rap song into on bids instead of cash. Stacking cash. It would be like stacking bids, bitches.
That's definitely on my next album for sure. I'll invite you in.
I could be background on that.
Yeah, as Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah. I'll just go, all right.
All right, on bids.
Yeah. Bids on bids. All right. We got the chorus. Okay, I'm in.
Damn, this is going to be huge. Huge. All right, a few more. My partner and I share a toothbrush because we believe it makes us closer.
Well, first, I would never want to share it, so I might be projecting. But it makes us want to be closer. It's weird. I'd want to look into it. There's a few things I'd be looking at.
I will say, going back to like the reminder every 3 hours, it's interesting because it's like when a partner says, I need more love, sometimes it's like their own anxiety, their own inability to receive it. And other times it's that other person's inability to action their love in a way that's recognizable. Yeah.
And as you say that, I appreciate you clarifying that and expressing that, because sometimes, a lot of times, we try to meet our needs with wants. So I want you to text me, but what I really need is to know that you love me and that I'm important to you.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to get you to do this thing, but it's really trying to fix a thing that is only fixable by dealing with the baseline need.
True. All right. Last one. I could do these all day, but we've got to come to a close at some time, my friend. Gosh, there's some really good ones here. I mean, the toothbrush one, almost want to say that again just to watch your face.
You're brushing your partner off your teeth. It's great.
When my partner and I cook together, I'm in charge of stirring and they can handle everything else. They say I'm a great stirrer.
That's great. know your roles, know your place, like know your strengths, I should say. And it's like doing it together is really the act that
Doing it
creates
together.
the intimacy.
I mean, I worry about that person getting stuck in the role of stirrer.
That's true. Like if they try to go to chopper
Yeah.
and they're like, hey, get back into stirring. It's not going to stir itself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You've said that as well to your partner. I've heard, see.
Yeah, exactly. I would be the stirrer for sure.
I'm the
Kylie
stirrer
is
as
very
well.
skilled. I think if making someone the stirrer is actually coming from a subtle need to control in the kitchen,
yeah,
then great to at least explore. Because if you can name, power dynamics will always exist. It's like my wife's not working right now. I'm paying for more things.
Yeah.
So inherently there's a power dynamic. When you're working with a client, there's inherently a power dynamic. But it's actually by taking what is implicitly happening. So we were talking about codependent hooks, and then like bringing them forward and making them explicit. So for Kylie and I, it might be like, hey, I know that right now the way that we pay for stuff is through me. What would be helpful? What does that bring up for you? Oh, I don't feel like I can use my voice. Okay, well, what structure can we create so that that doesn't happen? Should we get an account I have no access to and there's just money in it for you? Oh yeah, actually that'd be great. If I'm defensive, I might be like, oh no, what does that mean? You might be able to leave me with that money. Now, so it's like being able to be with what comes up for me, because then I'm actually exploring why paying for stuff is actually creating safety for me. So, it's like the stirring in the kitchen. It's like you bring it up because the person who's stirring might have this feeling in their stomach like this, I'm born for more, I'm meant to do more. I want to do more. And it feels like you're just, I'm meant to chop. I'm meant to chop, man. And you're like keeping me in this box.
God,
that's too funny.
If you out there, you find you're stirring, but you're meant to be a chopper, we liberate you. We liberate you like Mark's book called Liberated Love. That is what the entire book is about, is liberating you from your prison of stirring to the liberation of chopping. Go buy the book.
It's not about it.
It's not about it.
Yeah, it's if you find yourself stuck in a box of any kind, this will liberate you. And if it happens to be chopping, there's a special section. Stirring. You're meant to be a chopper. That's great.
This book is for you. This book is for you in so many ways. I really do hope everyone should go out and get this book. It's so helpful, even if it's not meant for you in terms of a significant other. It's meant for you with a parent or a sibling. It's got such rich support for you in creating healthy, free, liberated, supportive relationships. So y'all go get it.
Yeah, thank you.
Don't interrupt me when I'm trying to sell your book.
Yeah, would you please actually repeat? What I wanted you to do was repeat it. Sorry, I didn't hear you were finished. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I'm just fucking with you, Mark.
But what I do know is that if you read this book, it will change your life.
Yeah.
Because if you change your relationships, your whole life will completely... But life is relationships. So it's like if you master the skill of relating, you will master life. Yeah. Full stop. Yeah, my wife and I are very proud of the book and excited at all the reviews are coming in from people, and we're
I'm proud of you too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Writing a book, man.
Oof.
Especially with a wife.
It's like stirring and chopping at the same time, and you don't know what.
Are you the stirrer, the chopper? It really was these like two worlds coming together to alchemize into one book, which was great preparation for having a kid.
I will take that to heart.
Yeah, it was. Scott, this is so fun. Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. Where can people find you and hang out with you and stalk you in Idaho?
Yeah, add address.
Add address here.
You can find me on my podcast, Mark Groves Podcast, which you're going to be on soon. And also at markgroves.com. My Instagram will still be up. It's at Create the Love, but I'm not going to be posting new content on there after June 1st. But I will be doing more long form content and have been on YouTube, just because I think there's so much value to actually exploring the nuances of everything instead of trying to distill life in 60 seconds. And,
And we'll have this quiz on his YouTube of, am I codependent or not?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
This game show, I mean.
Yeah, perfect. It's a good game show.
Yeah. Thank you. You inspired it. You're
It's
so
so
inspiring,
good.
Mark.
That was fun. Thanks, Scott. Appreciate
Thank you so much, Mark. And thank you all to my gently used humans out there. Get a hold of Mark, follow him. Just better your life with his work. It's there for you. Take care, everyone. Thank you for listening to the Gently Used Human podcast with Dr. Scott Lyons and friends. Visit gentlyused.com for fun extras, and don't forget to spill the tea and gossip about the show with all your friends and frenemies. And you know what? Show us some love by giving us 5 stars and leaving a review in your favorite apps. This helps us connect with all the other gently used humans out there. Oh, and by the way, you look fierce today.